to be in the hands of UNOC, Uganda National Oil Company, and also to ensure that in that initiative, the cost of fuel into the country can be mitigated, can be handled to the effect that Uganda disengages from the original framework which was existing in terms of imports to the country from in the G2G, in the entrance from Kenya, as it amended its policy from the OTS, the open tender system. Now, the arrangement, as I gave you, just to refresh the minds of the listeners, was that before President Ruto took over, you had open tender system under Uhuru, President Uhuru, and when he took over, he was able to move very quickly and generate a policy shift to G2G, government to government, with the government of Saudi Arabia through Aramco and the United Arab Emirates through their affiliate bodies. The purpose was to try to mitigate the pressures that Kenya was facing in terms of the foreign exchange, because Kenya had to meet its bilateral and multilateral commitments in terms of debt payment, at the same time maintained the recurrent in terms of imports of fuel and other amenities into the country. So it was facing pressure, which now ignited the upward movement of the exchange rate between the dollar and the shilling. And that overheated the cost of the dollar in the country. Kenya therefore asked for a deferred payment under G2G. That deferred payment meant that Kenya would, in their initial agreement, defer the payment for 9 months. And until last month or so, that was renewed to the end of 2024 December. Uganda, citing the uncertainties in the imports of fuel into the country, and which generated the high cost of fuel at the pump price, went into evaluation of the whole process, in that if you look at the import bill to the country, downstream from Mombasa to the pump price in Kampala, or the country Uganda, you will see that Kenya usually imports and brings in between 6 to 7 ships, large vessels, what you call fuel tankers. And in this, most of the imports, Kenya retains about 60%. And in that arrangement, it also supplies countries like, in the neighboring countries like South Sudan, Uganda, Rwanda, the DRC Congo, and so on and so forth. What therefore happens is that in the import arrangement, you will realize that the Kenyan speculators would buy fuel in bulk, because you will note that out of the 170 OMCs, oil marketing countries, that are registered in the country, 98 plus are Kenyan registered companies. And if you look at the market share, Shell, Vivo, Total, and Starbucks control 46% of our import volume and market share in the country. The other 167 then control 54%. What was happening was that the speculators would import fuel in Kenya under OTS or G2G, hold it, and then make between $35 to $40 per ton. Once they held that money, they will now be able to, through the what you call the line fill of KPC, Kenya Pipeline Corporation, pick this fuel from Eldoret or Kisumu, sometimes Nakuru, and be able to bring this fuel into the country. Uganda consumes between 6.5 to 7 million liters of fuel per day, making it an average of between 200 to 210 million liters per month. What does that mean? And let me break it down. When you import this fuel, you pay for taxes in advance, apart from paying for the white stuff. You pay for taxes in advance. And
which taxes? Uganda taxes?
Uganda taxes.
Kenya taxes?
Uganda taxes. What happens is that, for example, petrol, you pay 1,450 shillings per liter. For diesel, it is 1,150 shillings per liter. For kerosene, it's 200 shillings per liter. That would be achieved because out of this, Kenya now and these companies would bring this fuel into the country and make a markup of between $8 to $9 million, which will be retained in Kenya. And if you put that into total quantity value, it will be a minimum of $96 million per annum. That will remain in Kenya. Two,
even before the fuel arrives here?
Even before the fuel arrives in here. So the companies which have got sister companies here would now have made that money back in Kenya and retains it there. And for example, let me give you a hypothetical figure. Say $800 per ton. What would happen is that they would sell it at the outlet here in Eldoret at 840, meaning that the $40 is already retained in Kenya, and the company here, for example, company X, would buy it at 840 and come and sell it nearly at 840, which means that corporation tax would be retained in Kenya. And if you note, until recently, all these arrangements which were put together, all these companies which were importing fuel into the country were declaring what you call losses. When they bring in their declaration to Uganda Revenue Authority, corporation tax will be negative, meaning that they have made a loss, but in actual fact they've made that money down in Kenya. So the speculators were making money in Kenya. 2, 3, there was also the component which was emerging. The fuel imported into Kenya, which President Ruto negotiated, had a component of interest rate. Uganda was paying for this fuel cash in dollars, but the component paid in and the fuel that we were buying had a small interest compounded on it, which would be passed on to the pump price in Uganda. And yet Uganda was not borrowing that fuel and did not need that loan for that fuel or that deferment. So in terms of the total framework, Uganda has now simplified this by generating what you call a policy shift, this paradigm shift, which, as you know, fuel is a cost pusher. Everything that you produce in this country, anything that, as you know, our comparative advantage is in agriculture, because 48% of the arable land in East and Central Africa is in Uganda. So our force value is in agricultural products. It is therefore important for you to note that in mitigating and ensuring that our value chain works on production and distribution, the strategic focus in this policy shift was to reduce the pump price, and that is the initiative of this policy.
The two questions. You know, all that sounds very, very nice until we get to the company, the other company, Vitol.
Yes.
So how does it come in? And
now, let me tell you one very important thing.
Because you're losing, or you've dropped all the other speculators and then carried one.
Vitol supplies, as a sole supplier currently in this policy shift, UNOC 100%. Now,
sorry, just say that again.
Vitol supplies UNOC as a sole supplier to UNOC 100%. 2, you'll also note that Vitol owns a Shell Vivo, or Vivo 100%. Vitol is a Dutch company anchored, or Shell anchored in Switzerland. That's where it operates from. And it's the largest fuel trader globally in the world. What I want you to note is that that is where the contention was in the parliament.
It is worth $550 billion.
It is what?
Worth $550 billion.
Right.
10 times the GDP of Uganda.
So that argument was settled on the floor of parliament. The whole thing for me as a person is that the key component of this is that how do we as Ugandans, how does the country achieve what you call value out of the cost of fuel at the pump price?
You're kind of dodging the question. So you've given a very, very good background. We are using words like G2G.
Yes.
After Kenya did G2G, government to government, but then you sneak in a Vitol. So what's Vitol's role?
Vitol now plays a monopoly, basically in supply to government of Uganda. That's clear.
Yeah.
And there is no doubt that in this arrangement, it also downstream in the supply chain and distribution chain plays a major role, because Shell Vivo has 152 petrol stations, followed by Total, which has got 148 petrol stations. And when you look at the pump price, Vitol or Shell Vivo still has the highest price load when you look at its display.
The retail price. Level. And now we've even given them a monopoly.
Yes, but I want you to note, as it were.
Anyway.
Let me put you a rider here.
Yeah.
I want you to note that very, very important. And this is why I think we will have to look at it, the supply chain end to end, not just to the pump price, but after the pump price. And this is where we need to look at the pricing models here. Vitol, Shell Vivo remains higher because 70% of its market is government. 70% is government. So they have a price loading apart from just the supply that they offer to government. They justify that by saying that they have a wider spread of administrative costs and so on and so forth. But the cost loading, if you want to look at it, Shell and Total, the two of them, have the largest supply chain to government. And normally they extend this credit to between 90 to 120 days. And let me look at just the figures. If you look at the pricing, normally they're higher between 500 to 800 shillings per liter. If you cost and take it to the minimum, say 500 shillings per liter, multiply this and assume that government consumes 50 out of the 210 million liters, or say 200 million liters per month, just 25% goes to government. Multiply the 50 million liters by 500, you'll get 25 billion shillings. Go further, 25 billion shillings, if you multiply this by 12 months, okay?
Yeah, yes.
That will give you 300 billion shillings. If you multiply that by a quarter, by 5 years, you'll have spent 1.5 billion shillings, which could have been saved if government was to again look at ways and means of mitigating those costs that could be passed to other expenditure areas of government. I intend to do a paper on this for you to understand the economics of it, because the ultimate, this 1.5 billion, which I'm trying to draw, is being externalized. There is no reason why, in my own view, government should not set up its own arrangement, like the Ministry of Defense, setting its own fuel tanks, setting up its own reserves, working out a fiduciary or financial arrangement of having what you call strategic reserves, so that you can reduce the dependency and this cost, which is a leakage to our national coffer.
Well said. Or managing the entire thing. But the going back to the first part and last question to you, Honorable Captain Mike. You are a member of a NRM party. I have senior presidential advisor. So this wisdom that has come 35 years later, what have you been doing?
No, I think that in every time of governance, it's not just Uganda. Uganda is a landlocked country. By law, we have a sovereign right to access to the sea. By law, the lawyers will justify that position. It's an international obligation. I think that in the past,
you should tell that to the Kenya middlemen.
Yes, the past, we had when you had the OTS was a little transparent, save for the
what's OTS for our listeners?
Open tender system. Was a little transparent. What has escalated and brought in the view of the president was now the detail that has now been exposed in terms of the leakage the country, Uganda, has been experiencing. And you'll note that Uganda and Kenya are sisterly countries. We have a bilateral and we have been existing. We don't have the infrastructure, the line field they have, the pipeline. We don't have storage capacity at the port, and so on and so forth. UNOC, for example, is a new creation by Parliament and the policy of government. And UNOC is like CNOOC, China National Oil Company. By the way, globally, oil and trade of fuel, of fossils, is 70% controlled by governments. The private sector plays 30%. The attention was drawn recently when we had the Russia-Ukraine war, when prices of fuel escalated. And
but we've been there, 2007.
Say what?
We've been there before, 2007.
2007.
We could have woken up then.
2007, I do agree with you that, yes, that was a wake-up call, because when we had the instability in Kenya, when President Kibaki, the late, and Raila Odinga had upheavals and the turmoil which befell Kenya, the price, our trucks were burnt in Eldoret, Kisumu, the highway, and the train, rail lines were uprooted, and this escalated the cost of fuel in the country. And you'll note that the price of the dollar, for example, went up from 2,300 to 3,700.
But my question was, why didn't we learn then?
The point was that I think the policy should have been one or maybe three. One, to increase our strategic fuel reserves, but we came in as a private sector and built, you note that in Ginger, government has got 30 million liters of fuel, 20 diesel and 10 petrol. We now, as the private sector, because this is private sector led and driven economy, we have built now the capacity under Mahadi of 70 million liters of fuel, and this cost is not amplified or sponged to the private sector, to the taxpayer. This is a private sector initiative.
Yeah, that's your company.
That's our company. Secondly, we have also provided a linkage which is cheaper between Kisumu on the line field with the barges that have been built, which carry 4.5 million liters of fuel. Each barge is longer than Nambole Stadium at about carrying 4.5 million liters. But the point I'm trying to give you is that the cost implications of this is that it is cheaper to bring fuel by water because than by road. And you'll also note that the charges are 161 by road per liter, and by water is 64 shillings.
I'm going to interrupt you there.
Yes.
Because for these Bulangos, you need to pick up to radio. But on that, all of us are with you, and that's a good venture. And there are some questions I'll ask Moses Perohanga when we get to him. Let's start with you, the distinguished lawyer, using Mike Mukula's words, Malcolm Pamizo.
Yes,
a good thing to wake up, a good thing for government to wake up and take up control of fuel, and I hope it will be smooth all the way, and that we will manage the agitating Kenyan middle people who are being cut out of this deal.
I'm recovering from that lecture on petroleum economy.
Yes. A lot of information.
And very interesting. I at the beginning of the presentation, I thought Captain was speaking on behalf of government as a supporter of the deal. I think towards the end there it became a little...
Actually, I invited him. The one who speak for government is Moses.
Yeah, but when he was speaking at the beginning, you would think that... but again, it is...
No, but I invited him as a knowledgeable person on fuel.
Yes. So towards the end there it became very clear that he's speaking as a private sector player. Among other hats.
Malcolm, you missed out a little bit on the unmentionables. He doesn't say a lot about Vitol,
but that's what it is, an unmentionable, and we'll leave it at that. I think the bill has been passed.
Joe Senyonyi is in, so maybe he'll speak a lot about it. Also, Ivan Rugamba, all of you welcome to Gang, and we have a Equal Opportunities Commission person, Head of Research, Monitoring and Evaluation, Bashir Lukungu. All of you gentlemen, you're most welcome.
Yes, so my thoughts, initial thoughts actually, when this was tabled, was what are we thinking? But as I've read and listened a little more over the last couple of weeks, I've thought that it might not be the worst idea that this government has come up with, to be able, and again from the kind of economics that is being shared.
You can say confidently that it's a good idea. To
be able to, reduce the cost of accessing petroleum for Ugandans. You did pose a very good question that why now? And that's something that we're yet to hear an answer for. It doesn't mean we shouldn't appreciate it. I am still at pains to really appreciate how that is going to function, because nearly every time government has attempted to engage in business or in some kind of supply, we have had trouble. I won't go over it would be a whole show if we try to do that. So there is that angst around how confident are we that this time things are actually going to work out. I also have a challenge, and I would love to hear what Captain Mike has to say about, you do talk about how this is a liberalized economy. Yeah. And that is in the same breath with a monopoly in terms of supply. What are the advantages of competition that we might be missing out on when we choose to go with Vitol?
And has Total and Starbucks accepted this?
Yes. So how do we benefit from this deal in the long term in a manner that we wouldn't have benefited from if there were, let's say, 2-3 suppliers? Because yes, and we've had figures thrown around before about how competent government contractors are and how they are very, liquid. They come from a very solid base. But then if it has 100 times if its capital base is 100 times our GDP, 10 times our GDP, what kind of negotiating power do we have with this kind of monster that is coming to supply and can decide to turn off a tap? Because we know how important fuel is to our economy, but we are selling our souls to this one person that will then decide when we have fuel and when we don't.
Let me give you some extra information. And this is interesting when we have an Equal Opportunities Commission man in the studio as we discuss these things. But between Total, Shell, and Starbucks, information from the Capital Gang, Mike Mukula, a week ago,
yes,
those companies own 90% of retail shops in Uganda. And the whole industry, those are now three. They own 90%. But the whole lot of them are
46%.
46%,
Yeah.
okay. But the whole lot is 175?
170.
170.
Yes.
So three of them own 46%. And the other 170.
167.
167.
Yeah.
With the other 54%. That shows the kind of competition that we are talking about. So we might be in a monopoly.
All of them.
We might
98% are not indigenous.
Of the
rest.
And so I think there's a much broader and it would also be good if this was part of a much broader plan to address the supply of fuels in the country. It feels like it is a knee-jerk reaction. It doesn't feel like it was brought through a process. And Oscar, I'm a process person. I always believe that the product is only as good as the process. When you have an agreement being signed with Vitol before even Parliament makes an amendment, why do we need to make an amendment if the deal has already been signed? Why do we need to discuss if the deal has already been signed? We know previous situations where we've signed.
Didn't you discuss penalty?
Which one?
Penalty.
I didn't want to go there, but you've brought it. So there was that was signed, and then we went to discuss, and we know where that. Actually, I'm not even sure where that ended up. So I think that it feels like it's a knee-jerk reaction to a situation. I'm thinking at the back of my mind even what the implications of the harmonization within the East African community looks like, because we are certainly taking away from our sister at the coast, who gives us access to the coast. We do have a right to have that access, but that right is not absolute. It is subject certainly to Kenya, so they can make it very difficult for us to access anything and everything else if we are focusing on
government
that.
to government, that would be okay, but those business people would be the problem.
They would be the problem.
On the hospital bit, I think it was the Senyonyi committee that wanted, but Senyonyi is here.
He's here with us.
That wanted to go and Lugezi check the hospital, and
they said December 2024 we shall have a hospital.
No, I'm talking about how when they wanted to go and check.
No, but when you have government deals, which are, however much you try to paint it as glossy and beneficial, but when they are shrouded in lots of secrecy and mystery, it becomes very difficult to get the buy-in and I think even from what Captain Mike has shared, I think the sole beneficiary in this deal is government.
Yeah.
It is government that is taking care of itself and saying we are going to save money, which we shall reallocate to other areas. Not necessarily that, and maybe by implication, the pump prices might come down, but it's actually the government trying to save itself
government
money.
May have better services with money allocated as well.
Which takes us to a whole other conversation in terms of the priorities and resource.
Let's go to Moses here. Yes, Moses. The idea, a lot of people accept that the idea is good, but then it kind of gets diluted when you bring in Vitol and when you have a contract quickly signed even before Parliament. So why couldn't the government have done the whole thing?
UNOC is doing the whole thing. Because see, if you get the background from what Honorable Michael Mukula has explained today and last Saturday I was listening in. First of all, before the current government in Kenya, what Kenya was to do, they would advertise, give a tender to a company to import fuel and sell to both Uganda and Kenya and other countries. So where they were buying from, we don't know. Whether they were buying from one person, that's why people are obsessed that why only Vitol? The one who is importing from for us, where was he buying from? Do you have any idea?
You have just said it was open tender.
No. You see, the role of that tender is now being taken by UNOC to import for Uganda. But Kenya would get someone, a company, they would advertise, and that person would import for both Kenya and Uganda. We had no role in who other than Kenya deciding it is now this company who is going to supply Uganda. Uganda is saying no. So that person will go and buy from Vitol, from other people, the refineries. And now we are saying let's buy from the supplier directly, by a company. If the money which was going to be, I was reading the paper that the Kenyan business people would make about 100 million a year in just importing for Uganda. They import and then sell to companies which are operating in Uganda. But now that role,
or their own companies operating in Uganda,
whichever it was, that role is going to be played by UNOC. So if UNOC, since for them is not profit motivated as a government company, that's one of the reasons Mike is giving here, which could bring down the prices. But if it was to maintain the same price level, it would mean that money will go to the treasury. The profit the Kenyan company would otherwise make would go to the treasury. So I wouldn't see any problem with that. But you can use it to mitigate against bringing down the prices. So the fear of why using Vitol, who were we using before? People were quiet about it. Now, but if Vitol being a supplier, their beneficiaries that they wouldn't want to sell to you at a price not in market price in the world. But the advantage with Vitol, like Mike was explaining, first of all, the Kenyan government, because of having issues with foreign exchange, even some companies here, we want to mention, who are exporting to Kenya, have been saying it is very difficult to get dollars out of Kenya. So it was also strategic when you say, why now? If Kenya is going to have problems of importing for you, what happens? Because of foreign exchange issues. So you rather deal with the direct, we might have a foreign exchange here, but if they don't have money to import and sell to you, what do? So you have to come in at the right time, make sure that you don't have issues of lack of fuel for the country, just because one who has importing for you doesn't have the money. And then Vitol is willing to give credit up to $200 million to UNOC, because otherwise we would have to capitalize UNOC. So why Vitol, that's the advantage of working with, but they will not sell to you because they think they're a monopoly against, over the prices in the international market. But they're able, as a seller, saying, okay, I can offer you good credit terms as long as you're buying from me alone, which is good for our country, and this being the biggest player. Otherwise, if Uganda was to go see to them being supplied by so and so and supplied by so and so, then we would have had now as a government to bring into the money, to pass money through Parliament to capitalize Vitol, to be able to have enough financial muscle to import for the country and so on, and so whatever it's going to do to be able to do it. But now they're able to get the fuel, sell it to the dealers in Uganda, and be able to pay Vitol in a good time. So it's a good deal for the country.
Yes, it seems like a good deal. Have you sorted out the implications of, the transition? Would there be a problem?
There shouldn't be a problem, because that's why it has to be given time. It is the time for because the rest of the process remain the same. The fuel will come at Mombasa, it passes through the pipeline up to Eldoret. Those remain the same. The pipeline is owned by the Kenyan government, so those payments will continue. And the buyers get the fuel from Eldoret. All these operators here, they get it from Eldoret. They don't get it from Mombasa. That process will continue. The takeover, that will be worked out at technical level, but I wouldn't see any shortage of fuel in the country just because any person has come in. Definitely, by the time you're importing, you must sure when will it be in the country, and be sure that there is enough fuel to run the country at any one moment. There shouldn't be any fear, in my opinion.
Okay. Joe Senyonyi, Honorable.
Yes, sir.
You discussed this in Parliament. This is your opportunity to commend the government of Uganda, led by NRM, on this wisdom now in managing fuel imports.
One, it's a surprise. I've had
Surprise, good thing.
I didn't say that. I said surprise. That government folks are saying we want to eliminate middlemen because that's our major problem, according to them. When we were inquiring into the famous Uganda Airlines, one of the challenges we discovered was middlemen. They were spending plenty of money on buying fuel from middlemen, and yet the suppliers in Dubai, in interacting with us, said for us we have no problem, we are willing to sell to Uganda Airlines directly, but if they don't buy from us, that's not our problem. If they are buying from a middleman whom we are selling to, how is that our problem? But for us, we are willing to sell to them direct. But obviously, the top officials in Uganda Airlines were the middlemen, and so they were making huge monies out of that situation. So when we hear these good people say, now we want to eliminate middlemen, I'm thinking, okay.
You want to clap hands, right?
No.
I thought
that's one. Two, you say it's important that we be orderly. If you're saying something is good, why do you want to do it under the table? That's one of our concerns. An agreement was signed with Vitol Bahrain. And you are now coming and saying, we have the agreement, now let's process the law, let's quickly amend. Why are you putting the cart before the horse? If it is a good thing, why not do first things first? Let's first agree that it is a good thing. Tell us about the goodness therein, and once we are convinced, or otherwise, then go ahead and sign the deal. But you have quickly signed the deal under the table, and now you're running to do things backwards. It's problematic. That already causes us to smell rats, because we have been here. We have been here with these kind of deals. When we were inquiring again as Kosase into Entebbe Airport and its expansion, the Honorable Minister of Finance, Matia Kasaija, signed an agreement for $200 million, which he did not read. This is what he confessed to us as a committee, and the media was there, so these are not my words. Because you see, the things we found in that agreement which were problematic. When you have issues, you run to China, which is giving the loan for mediation. When that fails, you go to court in China, and so on. So everything was skewed towards China. Whenever Civil Aviation Authority makes their budget, it has to first be sent to China for approval. This is a fact. Before they withdraw money from that escrow account and so on, China has to first approve. And several other issues which the minister himself confessed and said, look, I wish I had known, he said, my technical people advised me that all was well, so I signed. I said, but you're an educated man, fuel with your exposure, at least you should have read through, because by your own confession, you're realizing that what you signed was a bad deal for Uganda. And of course, he promised, he said, yes, that already happened, but we're going to do everything possible to make sure we pay back, we shall not lose our airport, and all of these things. So we have been here. We have been with the Umeme situation. We saw what happened with Bujagali, Pineti Coffee, Luboa Hospital that Malcolm has been talking about, etc., etc. Because you must open yourself up to scrutiny. Then we are sure what you're doing is right. But these backdoor dealings are problematic. Now, the question of a monopoly, we liberalized the economy. If we are to make exceptions, it must make sense as well. You're saying now we are going to have a monopoly, which, by the way, Vitol is a shareholder of Vivo Energy, which trades as Shell. We are talking about the different players. So now we know who has the monopoly, don't we? You've knocked out everybody else for whatever reasons. In a hurry. In hiding. You're bringing it to light. Because in essence, what they were telling Parliament is there's nothing you guys can do apart from rubber stamping this thing. Because
you've been there before, and there's nothing you could do.
There you are.
You just signed.
So sometimes they pretend. They'll say, okay, let's first come and seek the approval and amend the law. Then we, even when they'll get whatever they want. And so I saw some NRM MPs during the committee the committee that was handling this matter, huffing and puffing and making noise and what. Then on the floor of Parliament, they were saying a different thing. I said, hey, what happened here? So you can do that. After all, you'll have your way with the numbers, yeah? But be organized. So if you're saying we already have the agreement here,
you don't ask Mike Mukula privately about it. He might tell you what he thinks.
Yeah, if he's honest, privately he can. So we now know who has gotten the monopoly because we know who they're trading as. But you see, the question of a monopoly, there is no guarantee about fair prices to the consumer ultimately. These guys, Vitol Bahrain, they'll probably go and seek for funding and source for funding. Because the reason we are doing this, we are saying UNOC does not have the financial muscle to purchase from the refineries.
Or infrastructure.
So let's get Vitol, business people and so on, they will seek out for funding wherever. Who is going to foot the bill of that interest? It's a final consumer ultimately. You don't have any proper guarantees. You see also, and why it's important, if you're saying this is the best, expose it to open bidding. Let there be other players, yeah? There are some other players like Hake International Limited, which represents something called Maersk Line Limited, ES Group, and others, which has asserted their capacity to finance this whole process. Now, I'm not even saying they are the best. But I'm saying, why do you not open it up? If there's other people who are saying, we can do what you want Vitol to do, we have the capacity. Put them all on the table. Let's get the best out of it. Why you quickly...
Or Mike Mukula's.
Whoever. I don't care. You see, point is, there is people who are saying, we have demonstrable capability to finance this whole process. Why not put everybody on the table on a weighing scale, open bidding? Let's get the best, because you're saying you're getting the best, yeah? You're trying to shoulder Ugandan taxpayers or Ugandans generally who should be able to pay less for fuel that they are paying now. Why not open it up so that then we get the very best of them all? Clearly, this is a deal for someone in government. And with time, you're going to get to see the real animal, the real person.
You're saying who signed?
I mean, for a long time we kept wondering who is Pinetti. Now we know who Pinetti is. So you will know who is behind it all.
Question, you might know. But let's go to Ivan. Yes, Ivan. For you, what would success look like? What would show that this was a good deal? For
two things.
Because I know your brand new pickup. So.
Ouch.
So what would success mean?
In our get would say
I sometimes ask about Oscar's obsession with the pickup when you have
it's a powerful machine.
Machines out there. The outside parking of Capital FM today is
colored black. There are cars, then there is your car.
Anyhow,
well, Mike Mukula is here. When you have a petroleum deal,
okay. I saw some black. Anyhow, success for me would be two things. First of all, the priority for the state and such a strategic resource as fuel. The priority before anything else is constant, reliable supply of fuel.
As a security matter as well.
Yes, as a security matter as well. So that's the priority of government. And Oscar, you were asking why, for example, previously government had not thought about going this way. But of the many issues that the Ugandan state has had, at least since 1986, fuel, reliability of fuel as a strategic resource has not been one of that. So there's a popular saying that if something is not broken, do not attempt to fix it. So to date, that system has not, the fuel system or the supply chain and everything has not been broken. So there was not an emergency incentive to get it fixed. But right now there has been a development in recent times where Kenya, a neighbor and strategic and partner, unilaterally decides to change the process of procuring this fuel and availing it to its partners, especially landlocked ones like Uganda, by eliminating the open tender system, which was also responsible for the maintenance of the price. Because now the cost of fuel is the second priority. After you ensure reliable supply, then the cost or the price of that of the fuel is the second priority. And so you realize that before, at least on the open tender system, every metric ton of fuel was being purchased at about $35. With the elimination of the open tender system, the price has all of a sudden shot up almost 3 times to over $100 per metric ton. So with the shooting up of price, and especially in the short term, you're no longer now certain also. First of all, the price has changed. It has shot up almost 3 times. There was now need for government to step in and say and reduce the prices, because Oscar, we've been lamenting here over the last 3 years over the skyrocketing of prices at the pump. So the government had the genuine reason and the legitimate incentive to step in and say, now that you have destabilized the open tender system, which we've relied on all these years for regular and affordable supply, then we need to look into, because if you allow this unilateral decision to go, what happens the next time Kenya wakes up and says this? So government must also show that we are not cannot be held at ransom. As I said, once you disrupt a functional system, then we can also react or decide to review the existing system.
Okay.
So that was the primary incentive.
Okay.
And I want to allay the fears of Malcolm and about government doing business. Yes, government has burnt its hands in some business undertakings,
repeatedly,
but it has also had successful undertakings. For example, the national water, for example, is the most successful water system in the whole of Africa. It has repeatedly won awards. This is a government. National Water is a government company. It's a government-run, company. Vision Group, which government is a shareholder, is the only profit-making media state-run media enterprise in the whole on the whole continent. You have several areas where government is doing business functioning well, and since we set up
under the table,
that can be a commission that is you can legitimately criticize that commission, but that does not take away from the fact that what government is doing is a legitimate thing. And UNOC, since being set up, has so far executed itself very competently against the existing actors in the oil business, against SINOC, against Total, that are already existing. So far, at least we have no reason to doubt UNOC's readiness, for example, to assume every responsibility. And it is not a very old company, but at least since it's set up, it has been conducting itself and executing itself.
We would only worry about the transition.
Fairly competently. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to stop. I wanted to squeeze in Mike Mukula before the break, but let's have a break, and then Mike will come to you just to close out this topic.
The Capital Gang on 91.3 Capital FM.
Announcement here by the chairperson of Ngora High School All Students Association invites all you OBs and OGs to the Ngora High School, together with all TESO members of Parliament, LC5 chairpersons. I don't know whether this was directed at Mike Mukula. LC5 chairpersons, RDCs, religious and cultural leaders, civil servants, all the boards and PTA, friends and well-wishers to the reunion and fundraising to buy computers and equip the ICT lab. This is on 25th, that's next Saturday, Cloud 9 in Soroti City at 2 p.m. So, Honorable Mike Mukula, you better be there. So, in conclusion to this topic, Captain Mike, what can we see that will be a sign that this has worked well? What can we look out for? What does success mean to you?
I think success to me means that we are bringing home, first of all, the resources that should have been in Uganda. For example, corporation tax, which I said earlier on, which I elucidated on. Corporation tax, which is being paid in advance to Kenya, because the main supply chain, 98%, including the ones that are trading here, rubies, Haas, and so on and so forth, is paid for in Kenya. Here they declare, and you can always look at inland revenue, domestic taxes. They declare nil, the losses. They've been paying these corporate taxes into Kenya. 2, transport. 98% of all the trucks, if you went to Malaba, Busia, looked at the trucks, they're all Kenyan. And you'll find that this now, if we do a shift, you'll appreciate the component that Uganda will benefit from. Fees and so on, levies. Kenya, for example, as I've said, has got now the highest palm prices in the region. Why? Because Kenya employs about 9 different levies and taxes on its fuel, including the increase from 8% VAT to 16%. You'll find that the palm price as now until yesterday was about 217. And this has created a lot of uncertainty in the supply chain. Uganda is managing what you call supply economics. Supply economics means you deal with consumer. You want to address the factors of production and distribution in order to tackle poverty. Now, the center of gravity of production and distribution, including marketing, is oil. And that's why reducing the palm price is of a critical and strategic nature for the country. And I want, therefore, to look at what you call the key areas that I think we need to look at. The whole entire region has what you call a regulatory framework for fuel at the palm price. Kenya has got EPRA, Tanzania has the same, Rwanda has the same. I would think that Senyonyi and the group should now look at ways and means of, if you want to look at the short-term, medium to long-term, find ways and means of regulating. The moment we come in with we're now managing downstream, but when you look at the midstream, when we bring in the refinery, and we now need to ensure that we have, in electricity, in energy, we have ERA, Electricity Regulatory Body. That does a lot of mitigation in ensuring that you have a pricing of all production lines. Now, from clean energy, hydro, when you look at solar and so on and so forth. The point I'm trying to look at here, and this is what we need to look at going forward, let's find ways and means of ensuring that maybe we can amend the law, the provision of the authority of ERA to include, apart from electricity, we also bring the areas and the function of fuel, so that it can also regulate some of these things progressively. Currently, it's in the hands of the Ministry of Energy and one of the departments. But going forward, I also want us to look at why this hemorrhage Uganda is suffering from of the palm prices. That's why I brought the issue of regulatory.
Yeah,
there is no reason why you have the price of fuel of Total and Shell and Eurobis and all the other players being higher than the rest.
Yeah.
And yet
in fact,
the supply
David
line
in Kampala
is the
has
same.
written to me as saying that monopoly and Total have the highest palm prices.
That's correct.
So
now the benefit, and I've told you this, is because 70% of the consumers are government. 70%.
Yeah.
And you'll find that KCCA, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Police, Ministry of Internal Affairs, the
All
Army, all go to this point. They are financing these monopolies and to externalize these resources. We need a major reform, to ensure that apart from the palm price, we also ensure that there is a ways and means of mitigating the palm price in the country, so that there is a benefit in terms of amplification in our supply side economics of the country.
Thank you, Captain Mike. David also tells you, Ivan, that New Vision has just announced to shareholders that it made huge losses, so they should not expect any dividends this year.
For the first that's not true. Ivan, where have you been? What you're saying, Ivan.
Jimmy in Kampala asked you need to ask why our sovereign immunity had to be waived in the agreement with Vitol, as Joel was saying as well. Okay. So, Equal Opportunities Commission, you're most welcome to the Capital Gang. Mr. Lukungu Bashir, thank you for coming to Gang. Last week we featured that your 10th annual report, only a little bit, and I hadn't received the whole report. And then I got it from the Equal Opportunities Commission itself. So, whereas we had looked at the worry that most public employment opportunities, the people that have greater access are those from the west of Uganda, which seem to, blow up. But then when I read a lot more things, actually, it is not just that the problem. There's one, for example, so you have a long list of areas in Uganda that do not have access to an LC3 Health Center 3 or Health Center 2 is another big problem in Uganda.
Thank you. My name is Bashir Lukungu. As a commission, I think on 7th of November, we released what we call the 10th annual report on the state of equal opportunities in the country. Like I said, this is the 10th. We've been actually we have a series of reports from the 1st to the 10th. And the EOC Act of 2007 gives us under section 24 subsection 2 and 3 gives us the mandate to produce an act that are 5, and they're appointed by the president. They're led by the chairperson of the commission. We have the vice chairperson and 3 other members. One of the deliverables by His Excellency the President is that the members of the commission must, without fail, produce an annual report on the state of equal opportunities in the country and submit this to the Speaker of Parliament and a copy,
EOC.
Yeah, and a copy to the President. So each financial year we are supposed, according to the Act, produce an annual report on the state of equal opportunities in the country, but also as a deliverable by His Excellency the President of the Republic of Uganda to the members of the commission.
Nashi, what are you apologizing about? We ask you different questions. So you have gone to the President of Uganda.
Now setting himself up.
So now
we are saying you found out that job opportunities are mostly accessed by people from the West. You stick to your report. So in addition, you said that there are not enough health centers in the country, so access to medical services are. But now you're saying, every year you have done, and the president does this.
But the has got to be cautious.
So
you go to the report.
So this annual report, the 10th annual report, is not all about employment. This annual report has thematic areas. And one of the thematic areas in this annual report is employment, access to employment in among MDAs. The other is about political participation as a thematic area within the annual report. The second one is under human capital development, where we picked issues to do with under education. There was performance under UPE, PRE and UCE and USE, but also access to the loan, where we call the higher students loan scheme. But also we went ahead under human capital development. We talked about access to health facilities. That is the mapping of health facilities across the country. So maybe I can begin with access to health facilities across the country. So under access to health facilities across the country, we found out that there are certain districts that do not have health facilities, health center force, and even district hospitals. And these included, I think, Namisindwa, that is according to the Means of Health Master List of 2020, and Namisindwa, Karachi, Agago do not have any health center for or a district hospital. However, for district hospital, there are parameters, there are numbers that are supposed to be followed to have a district hospital. But the health center for, they also did not have. But also, we went ahead to look at specialists, distribution of specialists across the country, and we found out that the number in post is only 4%. Number in post.
The staff. So vis-a-vis, and these are mainly in Kampala. I'll give an example. For example, we don't have a cancer institute, maybe in eastern Uganda. This is a fact. That means that a person, for example, who is suffering from cancer or breast cancer, he has to come to Cancer Institute in Kampala. We were talking about a mother, for example, in one of the districts, maybe in Bududa, has to travel. A woman has to travel to Cancer Institute to be diagnosed to find out if he or she has cancer, if it's breast cancer, and then treatment starts. But since there are no hospitals, there is no cancer center.
The Homes and Construction
Mbale, or in Mbale, in Bugisu sub-region, this woman has to travel to Kampala for checkup and find out if he or she has cancer. In medicine or in the medical world, they call it, most of these patients who are suffering from some such diseases are lost to follow-up. What do we mean here is that they come to Cancer Institute for the first time. They are diagnosed with, for example, maybe breast cancer, but they never return when they go back to Mbale. Why? Because of lack of maybe transport. They don't have the transport means. They don't have where to stay. So because of the cost that involved in terms, the medication, whatever, may be free, but because of other costs that are involved, this woman ends up remaining in Buruda. And that's why you realize, for us in Islam, there's what we call shirk. They are blaming their neighbors of bewitching them. Yet, this is a disease that is as clearly manifested on this person's body, but is claiming because of the lack of specialists, that the specialists in the nearby center or the nearby town, they are blaming a neighbor that you are bewitching me, you have bewitched me, things like that. So what are we trying to tell government? We're trying to tell government that please distribute the hospitals
becoming a mother
across,
again,
so that there is inclusive access
to
some of these facilities across the country. About health facilities, about health center 3s and health center 3s, yes, these are fairly distributed across the country. At least we found out that almost all districts have a number of health center 3s. And at least, and I've said only
but
around.
You have listed here 40 that have none.
I said at least.
Oh.
I said at least. So and 40 may be even, because we have very many sub-counties, for example, in the country. So 40. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pardon?
There's no district without a center 3. Yes. So, and there are other issues within the report. For example, we talked about political participation.
Yes.
When we talked about political participation,
you also talked about creation of municipalities and cities.
So maybe I can talk about a bit of political participation. Under political participation, we talked about the composition of cabinet in terms of male and female. We realized that the trend has been increasing. Currently, our cabinet stands at 45.8% female, and the balance is for the male, of course. and that is a plus, and we actually when you look at it, we are actually number 49 in the world, 49th in the world, and we're doing well on that. Of course, we are not beating other countries like Rwanda, South Africa, Senegal, Namibia, and others. But also, there is some of these, where we get some of these issues is we get complaints from the public. Of course, there's a list that was actually circulating, for example, claiming that majority of some of the constituencies are from one sub-region, one region. So we went and did an analysis. Is this true? Actually, our findings are showing that Eastern, starting from Busoga, Bukedi, Bugisu, Teso, they have the highest number of MPs in the country. This is followed by Western, and then Northern, and then Central. So it's not true. So you see, there's a null. What people think is existing, but that null is now put to an investigation, which is a research, and now we've proved as the commission that indeed what people think is not a fact. It's not true. So our report is now trying to answer to what the public was saying, which is not true. But also,
the way Ivan is shaking his head when you say you have found out that most MPs come from Eastern Uganda, not Western Uganda.
But I have been shaking my head throughout his presentation.
But also, we've seen, yes, because we've seen that we have more members, for example, 33.8% women members of parliament. Yes, women members of parliament. But come at local government level, LC5 chairpersons, we only have 2.6%. Look at LC3 chairpersons, LC1 chairpersons. Out of the total number of LC1 chairpersons that we have in the country, we only have 3% being female. What does that one mean? The implication in that, it means that without affirmative action, still a woman is lagging behind. Without affirmative action, we cannot have, for example, a person with disability being represented in any level. We only have, for example, one chairperson who has a disability in all the districts. We don't have a chairperson. We don't have, for example, ethnic minorities represented right away from lower local governments. When you talk about ethnic minorities, we are talking about the Ik, we are talking about the Batwa. Some of the Dodoth. Some of these people are not represented. Without affirmative action, we cannot see them anywhere. So, as a commission, what are we trying to say? As a monitoring, and because this report also acts as a monitoring and evaluation tool, so that we're asking ourselves, as affirmative action achieved what it was intended to do? What is the impact of affirmative action? Yes, we've had representation of the different groups. For example, the youth, at parliamentary level, the women, the older persons. As this translated, has it gone down? For example, to the LC1 chairpersons, do we have youth who are LC1 chairpersons? Do we have LC2 who are women? Do we have LC3 chairpersons?
You make good points. So, Mr. Bashiru Kungu, let me interrupt you here and just ask you one question before we have discussion around the table. Okay. Where can people find this report? And what would you like them to do when they find and read the reports?
Okay, one, this report can be found in Parliament. It can be found.
You want me to go to Parliament?
No, it can be found on our website. We can give you a hard copy from our office. But also this particular report.
So a person comes to your office, requests for a hard copy, and they get it. Yes.
Then also as a report, how do we use this report? How do we use the report? There are recommendations in this report. These recommendations go to particular entities.
Yeah, let me read one recommendation.
Yes.
Government of Uganda should increase the budgetary allocation to the health sector budget to meet the 15% threshold of the Abuja Declaration.
So that one now goes to the Ministry of Finance and Parliament. So we shall follow up with the Ministry of Finance and Parliament to ascertain how far have they gone to implement this kind of what?
You using Malcolm's words, saying what did Bashir have for breakfast?
No. So actually, the different recommendation. If you read this report, one of the chapters, that is chapter 9, is showing you the status of implementation of the previous recommendation. What have the ministries, departments, and agencies done on our previous recommendations? And they have answered to this. We don't only depend on what they have told us. We do tracking. We go on ground to ascertain how far. Is it true what the ministries have told us?
Government-aided schools. I see you put a red flag. Nothing done. They have not increased staff.
Yes. So that's why, and that's a response from the Ministry of Education.
Okay. Let's start with you, Joel. The Equal Opportunities Report. This is the 10th version. Have you read one before? It's quite informative, actually.
One, I want to appreciate this report because they've captured a couple of things that we talk about, only for detractors to say we are just politicizing issues. So,
pardon?
Or you are the detractors yourselves.
Moses.
Go on.
And so, there are things that we have talked about. We are about to sound like broken records that are not paid attention to. You are just talking about healthcare. Yeah. Here they capture that Bukedi sub-region comprising 7 districts lacks a regional referral hospital. 7 districts. Out of 52 government general hospitals in Uganda, approximately 60% of the country's districts lack such facilities. 4 districts have neither a government hospital nor a health center. 4. Agago, Karaki, Namisi, Ndua, Napak. 172 sub-counties lack health center 3s. Can you imagine? This is problematic. So mothers will continue dying, during childbirth. People will continue dying of treatable ailments and so on and so forth. Why? Because we have not paid attention to this animal called healthcare, just like several other issues. So it's good a government entity is telling government that, look, these are not political issues. When the Senyunis talk about these issues, it's not just for politics. It is real. There are other issues of concern. He talked about the students' loan scheme. 2 months ago, as Kosase, we inquired into this and out the report. We are still waiting for action to be taken. We discovered there are districts that hardly benefit, and then there are districts which regularly will have huge numbers of students benefiting. And MPs were mad. It was interesting watching that debate across the divide. I saw some MPs extremely mad, saying, you people, you think for us you don't matter. I said, okay, this is interesting. I don't know. Hopefully these issues get to be addressed. So it's good you have captured that, because when you see the reason given for the way jobs are distributed, it is tethered to education. I'll read this for you. For example, the Western region shows the highest percentage of employees in top positions at 40%, followed by Central region at 26%, then North and East, that's 12 and 21% respectively. Now, the reason, when you read the reason for some of these issues this way, it's because high level of so yes, proximity to information, that's number 1. Access to national data, availability of resources, and then access to education. Because these that have, the percentages, Western 40% and blah, 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 they have a larger population of educated individuals. Is it that other regions don't want to study? No, we are not availing these opportunities. That's why you see the student loan scheme is skewed to particular regions, to particular districts, which is wrong, which is problematic. Because ultimately, and you've heard people, even in government, try and justify that, you see, these people who are hired in government, yes, majority of them be from one region, but they qualify. Okay, number 1, are they the only ones that qualify? But 2, the reason they qualify, many of them, it dates back to the education issue, which Equal Opportunities Commission is pointing to. Because if you are availing education facilities in particular regions, the vast majority of them, obviously you'll have more educated people from there, and resultantly those will be the biggest beneficiaries ultimately. So we need to deal with these root cause issues, otherwise we end up dividing our country. When I'll end with this, when we were inquiring into URA, as Kosa said, so one of those meetings we asked them, you give us your staff lists. And I looked at them, my head churned a bit, but I said, okay, let me first go to other issues. And one particular MP from Agago, the Honorable Ricky Anywa, is, and then I remember, he looked at the list and he was mad. He said, no, Honorable Chair. I said, Honorable, what are you saying no to? He said, this list I'm looking at is problematic. 8 out of the 10 commissioners are from one particular region. Then he went down to the staff list, similar situation, you know. And of course, we could not pin the officials from URA because they don't appoint themselves. Our quarrel was now with those that appoint them. And that can be said of some other entities, because this is the report anyway of the Equal Opportunities Commission. We need to fix these issues, otherwise we end up unnecessarily dividing our country.
Let's stop for a break, and after the break we come to you, Honorable Captain Mike.
The Capital Gang on 91.3 Capital FM.
Come back from the break. At this rate in the break, Bashir could have ended up as poor Bashir. But Captain Mike, whereas the report says that most MPs are from your area in the east of Uganda, and do not deny, because when they said west of Uganda, the west of Uganda, they said, but there's a breakdown. But he has also said from the east of Uganda. But then the poverty we know is from the east of Buganda, of Uganda. The places without health center 3 or 2 east of Uganda. So he has a list. You read the list. They enjoy about 30% on that list. Did I mention poverty level? Yes. Mm-hmm. So east of Uganda, you are not enjoying equal opportunities.
No, I would first of all like to thank the Equal Opportunities Commission for their report. And this is a constitutional provision. And they have raised areas that tackle the political, economic, and social aspects of the lives of the people of Uganda. And that's why the matrix of the issues that they have raised touch on key, very fundamental issues. For example, as you said, that in the health sector, there are certain districts like Namisindwa, Kalaki, and so on and so forth, the park. These are new districts. These are new districts which were not in the provision of the health sector strategic plan. The health sector strategic plan integrates and interlocks with a multi-sectoral approach in budget allocation in what you call the medium-term expenditure.
Mike, people are listening to you in Capital Ganga, even from home,
I'm giving
as you are saying these things. They are listening to him.
It's a fact.
They are listening to him.
Yes, Kalaki deserves, and it will get a district. But it broke out of Kavermaido. It was part of Kavermaido. And you will see that Kavermaido initially did not have even a district hospital. It was elevated into a district hospital, and certain provisions, including ambulatory services, were provided to the districts. The question now is that there are also certain aspects which were raised in the report, like
staffing,
the staffing, and also the intricacies that emerge out of the treatment, for example, of oncology or cancer, which are very precarious, which are referred to the national hospital in Mulago. You see, when you look at the whole framework of it, of government expenditure, and that's where resource allocation is key. You will note that initially, primary health care in the health sector strategic plan 1 and 2 was focused. The budget was focused on immunization getting what you call non-communicable diseases treated, like malaria and so on and so forth. The new trend now is that non-communicable diseases are on the rise, like cancer, lifestyle diseases like diabetes, pressure, and so on and so forth. In a year or two, they will be at par with non-communicable diseases. That's why the strategy now is shifting. Initially, it was health center 2s, health center 3s, health center 4s, and health center 5s, in order to address what you call community-based requirements or needs. But now the theme is shifting, and I want you to note that in terms of that strategic framework, all the referral hospitals in the country have now been supported with what you call diagnostic equipment, radiology. You now have, for example, Arua, Lira, Gulu, and so on and so forth, having what you call something higher than, much better than even an MRI. They now have CT scans. Most of these hospitals they
have CT scans that work.
Yes, they work. Now, the main thing now is staffing, because this is new technology, training and capacity building. The other point that you'd want to note is that in terms of the demographics, there's been what you call a gain the country has been able to achieve out of immunization. If you look at the recent statistics, the age between 0 to 4 years is 16% of the population, which is about 8 million, 7.9 million Ugandans. The age between 82 and above is 0.4%, which is less than 203. Now, what does that show you? We now have a population between 0 to 30 years, which is slightly over and above 50% of the population. It's a young nation. The demand in terms of the health and priorities are shifting. The upper level, you now have what you call an inverted pyramid. They now demand more schools, primary schools, because look at 0 to 4, 8 million. How many primary schools do you have? We are producing every day, 5,000 children and above. Those are recorded in health centers, 5,000 approximately. We're producing over 150,000 children every month.
So what are you saying?
What am I saying? The population growth, the
Eastern region,
gains, as it were, will need to have a more thorough approach. We need budget allocation. This budget allocation is out of a narrow revenue stream. Less than 3 million Ugandans are within the radar of Uganda Revenue Authority. That means that we now need to identify more alternative resources in order to focus and address the country's needs.
As you conclude,
as I conclude,
Chairman,
I want to say,
Eastern NRM, what is the promise you're giving him to mitigate these unequal opportunities?
There is need for us, particularly the region I represent, the report that has been presented to ensure that we have access to equality in terms of employment, as it were. That is fundamental. It is also important that areas of poverty, which are higher in the north and northeastern as a result of the wars we had in the past, the instability. Karamoja had nearly 60,000 guns, and post-independence, Karamoja was unstable. It was a no-go area. Now, these are areas that are now being addressed. The focus now is that this report must be tabled to cabinet for effective directional approach. But I want to say, hasten to add, that the manifesto that we are implementing is addressing most of these fundamentals, and that's why it is skewed towards what you call the supply side economics and social factors to ensure that the needs of our people are addressed.
Okay. Malcolm, you've heard, and Captain Mike has responded about things will look good soon in the east. I was thinking even in Joel, even in the private sector, it is Malcolm enjoying top job as a distinguished lawyer.
I have
described
relatives from
by
the east.
Malcolm is a hustler. Hey, go on.
I tend to hustle every once in a while. I'll probably start by reminding both the Moses and Mike that Agago district was formed in 2010. Napak 2010.
13 years.
Namisindwa 2017.
Just add this slight one. They create these districts apparently to bring services closer to the people.
Yes. Thank you very much for picking that out, because that's where I was heading. So they are not necessarily new. And again, what is new? If this is part of the plan, why not first amend the health sector strategic plan to provide for? So why were these districts formed? If it wasn't to bring quality health services closer to the population, because that seems to happen much later. So 13 years later, there is still no health center 3.
Or were they formed to bring an MP to parliament?
And maybe
an NRM MP to parliament?
Maybe that was achieved. Yes.
Don't make a mistake between a hospital and health center 3. There's no, you cannot say Napak, Agago, Kalaki doesn't have health center 3.
Health center 4. It's health center 4. Yeah. Yes, health center 4. But we are talking about a population, and Captain has talked about how we are growing at an alarming rate of 5,000 babies per day. As early as 2010, 2011, I had the very distinguished honor of visiting Captain Mike's home in Bugolobi and listening to some very interesting conversations. He was recruiting us, the young men, and sharing very knowledgeable information, but talking about how we need to harness the demographic dividend that is coming. So we've been growing at the base for several years now. So you shouldn't be at this point expecting to have, I think they are expecting to have 738 pediatricians in health centers, and we have only 60 across the entire country, and we are hoping that those 60 are going to keep all those babies alive for us to benefit from that demographic dividend. I think that when these districts are being formed, when these political lines are being drawn, let us think about the people and try to address what they are facing. Oscar, the report that we have before us, and I tried to check the website for other reports there, which share very, very interesting information. I was sharing a little earlier that I think it tells us a lot of what we already know. If they have done a very good job as the Equal Opportunities Commission, it is to try and justify why they shouldn't be on the list for rationalization. That is what they have done, and I would recommend that they are taken off that list so they can keep giving us statistics to the things we already know and talk about. But these statistics don't seem to mean much. The 15% budget spending of the Abuja Declaration is something that has been there over and over. I'm actually glad that it's a government entity. If civil society were to produce a report like this, there would be problems, because we would be labeled enemies of terrorists, enemies of progress, and fighting the steady progress that is going on. But sometimes steady progress can be too steady, and we need to make changes. So these statistics here, I'm not so sure that they will be put to good use. I know that when those that speak for government, when they speak about these statistics, they are going to paint a picture of there's so much else that has been done. But let us not deceive ourselves that if a government does not invest in the education and health of its people, then it is choosing to keep them at a level where it can manipulate them, it can control them, it can, play all sorts of tricks, sign bills under the table and go to parliament later. It can, do all sorts of things to keep itself in power because it is not educating, it is not ensuring the health of its people.
Let me just add one thing very briefly to say that planning and implementation is not like Genesis chapter 1. Let there be, and it was. It's a process. That's number one. Number two is that when you look at these facilities, as it were, for example, Mlago. Yesterday I had a friend of mine, a member of parliament, who had a concussion. He fell and injured himself and had a bleed in the head. And he had a neuro operation in Mlago because they had a massive clot in the head, in the brain. They had to evacuate this clot. What am I saying? There are so many case studies like this. Every day, doctors that we have who are carrying out specialized operations, and they're doing a pretty good job. However, when you look at the social demands versus the capacity we have as a developing country, we still have a challenge.
Yeah, as we come to you, Moses, MKZM Katongole on Twitter says Uganda Cancer Institute has opened in Gulu, Planza, Fumbara, and Mbale Soti. Too little, but some progress. And I think he was here on Gang some time back, crying for CT scanners. Why are they on in Kampala? Now every RRH, what's RRH?
Regional Referral.
Oh, has one. Functionality very low. Why no specialists posted there? That's for you, Moses.
Oh, I'm happy about that because from what Honorable Mukura has mentioned, you see, you don't do everything at the same time. Our line...
You need 40 years.
Our line, or even more. Because the countries you compare yourselves to have been there for over 200 years. From when there was American declared independent, 1776. So how many years are those? More than 40 definitely, if you know how to count Senyon. 200. Definitely it's more than 40.
So you guys have been saying take off since 30 years ago. Every year we are taking off. We are taking off.
I'm saying I'm happy about some of the issues you have talked about in that message. In our manifesto, the manifesto which we are currently having, the Katongole has just mentioned what I was going to say. That we put it, even you look at our manifesto, page 73 of the abridged version, we are saying we shall construct regional cancer centers in Gulu, Arua, Jinja, and Mbarara. In this Kisanja, Jitulimu. So the message you have just got is to prove what we promised. So I'm happy that it's happening gradually. And then also...
But finish off, say, now we'll staff it by the end of Kisanja. That's how you should finish it off. And also when Mike says here, an MP went and got neurosurgery.
Yes.
Me, I'm just thinking, of course. Of course.
Yes.
Of course. And if it is not enough, they might fly him to Nairobi.
Don't interrupt me.
There's even a more
I'm not interrupting, I'm giving you better words to use.
We even had a more complicated case of what you call the interlocked twins in Soroti Referral Hospital. Dr. Podoi and the specialists in that hospital carried out a separation which would not have been done and had been rejected in Mlago. The point is, these are children of peasants. They are alive and kicking. And that was done in Soroti.
So, Oscar, now...
That's a good example.
Oscar, then the other thing we put in the manifesto under health sector was to equip all those regional referral hospitals with the equipment which that same person is talking about, because they were less equipped to meet the challenges they were meeting. Now I'm happy that I hadn't gotten a report from health, but now that somebody else who is not in the studio is telling you that it's already happening, the equipping, giving them MRI, CT scans and so forth. It's important that all our regional referral hospitals and even go down to lower district hospitals get this equipment. And now the challenge is pointing out is staffing. So that's a good challenge, that at least you have the equipment, have the people to run them. And one of those points was raised by Malcolm here about staffing. You see, staffing, when we, as the government recently, raised the salaries of scientists, on this radio, people are making hullaballoos, quarreling, blah, 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 blah. Those specialized medical personnel are on a demand worldwide. You need to pay them well.
Why don't you pay them well?
We need to pay them well. But when we did it, people were quarreling. We were quarreling. Why are you desegregating? What, blah, blah, blah. So, why are you paying science teachers? We went here.
You missed the import of the quarrel.
Why are we paying science teachers more? But the other scientists who want to be a doctor will be taught by science teacher. How will he become a doctor? No, just not out of the blue. So, but anyway, for me, I'm happy we know what we are doing, and we are doing it very well. And also, when you're saying we need the people to man these institutions, they must be paid well. These are scientists, they must be paid well, and that's our line. Someone here was answering himself. He's saying 172 health centers, sub-counties don't have health centers to raise. Well, out of 2,000, I think the progress is doing well. Or the 172, yes, they don't have, but out of 2,000, many already have.
Yeah, but even those are like kiosks.
Wait.
But
But that's why I said equipping. We put in a advice to equip them. And somebody is, one outsider who is not in this studio, who is not a government official, is saying they are being equipped. And you have heard it yourself. Now, so, and that's part of our line. So our NRM policy on health has been first, immunize children. I don't know the Eco-Parentis Commission report on immunization. Is there a district or an area where children are not immunized almost 100%? That is our health policy. Number one, immunize children.
In Rotary, we have done a lot of that immunization.
It's not. See, for you are talking about a hospital, you go to hospital when you are sick.
Malcolm, you know that in Rotary we have done a lot of that immunization.
Immunization,
the bulk of it.
Immunization is prevent you going to go to the hospital. If you start with the hospital without immunization, then you'll have a big challenge. So our policy has been have children immunized, have health centers to raise in every sub-county. In fact, our target with the health centers which were there in sub-counties which were there by 2018, by now almost each one of them has a health center 3. The challenge has been the creation of new sub-counties.
In fact, let me add here, Moses.
Yep.
In the 2001-2006 Health Sector Strategic Plan 1 and 2 for 10 years, government built 869 health centers 1 to 9, equipped the hospitals and with 325 ambulances. The idea was to reach, to ensure that within 1 to 5 kilometers, every person had a reach.
Captain, come again. How many ambulances?
868.
Okay. Moses, go on, because we are out of time.
Just complete.
That's remember the ambulance system.
Captain Mike, that was in the send us where you are quoting that from. Complete, Moses.
Look at
I want to go to...
Read the Health Sector Strategic 1 and Health Sector Strategic 1, 2
and to go
3.
to Ivan.
Yes.
Okay. So on the health, it has been a major point in the discussion. So first, have children immunized, but they don't fall sick. And we used to do, we call them 6 killer diseases. We increase them, I think about 13 now, including diarrhea, including cervical cancer for the girls and so forth. We increase the immunizable diseases to ensure that our children don't fall sick. Provision of clean water services so that some of the diseases as a result of clean dirty water are significantly reduced. Now, the next stage has been, after immunization, is ensuring each sub-county has a health center 3 which offers general services. Now, for health center 4, and we say let's first equip all the sub-counties before you go to all health and health center 4 was meant for the constituencies. So obviously, when you create a constituency, you're going to require a health center 4, but other services in that area there. If you then a district is about a district hospital. Now, Minister of Health has been saying we don't necessarily have each district have a district hospital in the sense geographical area, but to cater for a certain number of population. To look for about 500,000 people. So if you look at Namisi, those are not having a district hospital now, because as a district. But within that area, we find that same Manafa hospital is catering for Namisi because it is within the population geographical area. So that caters it. If you go to Agago, you'll find there's a hospital in the region, either Kitugum or Pade, which is catering for that population of about 500,000 people. So most of those, but the best is having a health center 3 at a sub-county, because that's one caters for because most of the diseases we have here are malaria related and so on and so forth, which are the antenatal, postnatal, giving birth, which can be handled at health center 3. If there are any complications, they can go to health center 4. But that area has been, we are doing our best, and we are not so poorly doing. In view of that, but in view of the Bashir here raised the issue of 15% Abuja declaration. Some of these declarations are overstretched. If you are going to say 15% Abuja declaration on health, 15% of what declaration on this, then what will you do? When will you do the others? And in view of the demand,
but we signed on it. We could have refused to sign. Even one for education, we could have refused to sign.
Otherwise, you have no budget.
It was renewed, and we still went back.
Otherwise, you have no budget. So,
Ivan,
on that one, we can't agree. We definitely cannot go by those declarations all the time, because none talks about security, none talk about roads. They talk about some few issues.
Yeah.
So when will
if this 8 million are healthy, then they will work on the roads. But Moses, let's go to Ivan.
When will you do security of a country, and it's number one?
Oscar, I've been perusing through this report, and it's a two-sided thing. You can just look at it as a glass that is half empty, or one that is half full. Because when you look at some of the figures, even the ones that they are calling that they're being the subject of clickbait, so popular commentary, they don't give the other side. Like Moses, for example, pointed out, if you say 176 sub-counties do not have health center 3, that is 7% of the sub-counties in the country. It means 93% of sub-counties are all covered. If you talk about that is what I am saying. So you will mention the 100 and they will sound many, but when you compare that, the sub-counties are 2,184. Yes, but you see, the message is that government appreciates this, and the majority have been covered, and they are going to cover the.
You are seated right next to Malcolm,
yes, and
he will
also
tell
when
you,
you consider that we
Ivan,
have a problem.
Malcolm will tell you that if you kill only one person, it is enough to
but some of these figures and some of these classifications, are the function of our continued demarcation and distribution of districts and administrative units. You see, if you say these sub-counties do not have some, 5 years ago, some of these perhaps did not exist. But as we create more administrative units, we go closer and closer to ensuring that every radius, to the people. And right now, if you look at, if you look at the
you continue. No one can. The listeners are concentrated on you.
If you look at the National Development Plan 3, for example, and reviewing the previous progress on the others, nearly 90% now of households in this country are in a 5-kilometer radius of a health center. Nearly 90% of the households in this country, and that is deliberate, because government's priority has been preventive health care. Because health is only repaired in hospitals, in these referral hospitals, in national referral hospitals. But maintenance, it is serviced at health center 1s, 2s, and 3s.
Maternal mortality rates have come down.
Yes.
Infant mortality rates have come down. And the general population, in terms of the equation of healthcare, has improved tremendously.
But stop using that quote of 5-kilometer radius. Just say, you should say in Kampala, because 5 kilometers kilometers in some areas is a long distance.
Yeah, but the idea is that 5 kilometer radius at most is workable. At most, the biggest
For a person who is ill.
No, I'm saying, you see, what is the alternative? 5 kilometer radius.
Yeah, I just advise stop using that.
Because you cannot say you will have a health center. No, Oscar, you cannot say you will have a health center in every household or at every or in every LC1.
Finish off, and I ask Bashir.
Anyway, but concluding, there are other many things that the report talks about. For example, it shows that over 86% of MDAs that were assessed, for example, passed the gender and equity assessment by over 50%. Over 86% of MDAs that have been assessed. And mind you, even the figures, of course, they've only looked at 3,000 private sector jobs, the ones that the Senyons are saying predominantly in the West. There are over 300. There are over 300,000 public sector jobs in this country. The report assessed over 3,000, which is about 1%. So some of these figures are important for their symbolic value to prick us to be more ambitious, but they do not necessarily say the picture. They do not mean that the actual picture is grim as they say, because everywhere, Oscar, you will find anecdotes. You will find anecdotal evidence of a sub-county that does not have 100% of services. But the best way to evaluate the performance of government is to do percentages, to look at an overall picture, to assess averagely. And
let's go to Bashir, Mr. Bashir Lukungu. What do you take
before Bashir concludes?
Because it's midday already.
Somebody has sent me a message saying recently this person was carrying Siamese twins who were conjoined on the tummy and were separated here at Mulak Hospital. Basically saying these various services, which Mukula had talked about, are improving by every passing day.
Okay. What do you take from the discussion on the table today?
Okay.
Those ones for Moses, I'll take him on after the break. Okay. after the show.
Okay, thank you so much. Me, what I would say is that meaningful inclusion of all requires applying an intersectional lens to identify and understand the often overlapping layers of exclusion and make sure that the diverse population, including the most at risk and others, can participate, benefit, and access the services in this country.
Thank you. We are moving in the right direction.
And we are moving in the right direction. Yes, maybe like Ivan here said, yes, we didn't talk about the percentages. We only gave absolute numbers. But when you look at what the government or what Uganda has gone through, you see progress. We are saying that this report is a monitoring and evaluation tool. It shows you where we were and how far we have gone. Okay. So the progress is seen, and as Ugandans, we are actually seeing the progress and the services we brought.
And the politicians can do the.
And the politicians can do the.
Let's have Mike Mukula, a BMK gift, our regular listener, says in Raila Odinga's statement this week, said there was no G2G. And he asserted that Kenya did not sign any contract with Saudi Arabia, but Mukula keeps referring to that arrangement. Producer has given me 2 minutes for you to address that one.
No, I think what comrade or brother, the Prime Minister Raila Odinga, former Prime Minister, was saying when he was addressing the press conference yesterday on the G2G was that one, the supply agreement to Kenya under G2G is being managed by a company. He would like to see a G2G between the government of Kenya and the government of Saudi Arabia, not with a subsidiary or any other operator.
He's saying what Malcolm and Senyonyi are saying, G2G not with Vitol.
Well,
you may not say it in that way, but...
Well, that one is an arrangement we discussed already. But the fundamental that you would want to capture here
is you've done that, it. Moses, 1 minute.
We would like to leave the Kenyan politics and now concentrate on perfecting the G2G of Uganda.
Okay. Moses, 1 minute.
1 minute. When you saw me here, I got out of the studio. to answer a question which was raised by some people here about why was the deal signed before, I talked to both.
Why was it signed undercover?
Not undercover.
That one we can
the cover was
2
there.
minutes for it.
The cover was there. It was not undercover. It was only before the Parliament passed the bill.
Yes, the cover was there. It was under the cover.
So I talked to both the Attorney General of Uganda, the Honorable Kiriwa Kiwanuka, and also the Permanent Secretary Ministry of Energy, Princess Irene Batebe. Now, on these two issues, first of all, government had to come out, agree with the business partner on the business provisions of, like now, Vitol is supposed to, among others, build a 300 million liter capacity here in Kampala for fuel reserves, which can last for up to at least 1.5 months. It's part of the contract, but also the contract would only become effective after Parliament has passed the law. That provision is already in the contract, and also 3 is since the Vitol is also financing the capitalizing UNOC. They had first to agree with a partner on certain terms before you go to Parliament and say, "This is what I'm going to do." On the question of won't that create prices being high? There's a provision within the
even
contract.
Sovereignty issues.
There's a provision in the contract that they will be monitored. The prices Vitol will be offering to UNOC must be competitive internationally. So you're going to just say, because you're buying from only me, I'm going to say it to you at a very
but that's a great area, Moses. If Vitol says because of some markup issues, or I'm dealing with this and so on, I've got to break even.
I say it, but it must be competitive.
Thank you, listeners, for listening to the Capital Gang.
Thank you.
Bear with us. We've run a little bit late. Mega Yogurt, thank you so much for your support on Gang. Star Cafe, thank you so much. Performance of Star Cafe has been a little bit poor this morning. I don't know, Malcolm, if you came with your samosa in the pocket. Oh, okay, you had. Maybe it is Bashir Lukungu. Maybe it is Bashir Lukungu has not eaten. So I am Oscar Semwe Amsoke, wishing you a happy weekend, enjoying the royal wedding. Our dear friend, sometimes a gangster has lost his mother, Daudi Mpanga, Mrs. Joyce Mpanga, an icon in the country. May her soul rest in eternal peace. So we shall see you next week.
To leave the two of you truly, deeply, and madly in love. DoubleTree Tours and Travel takes you anywhere to make your dreams come true. It could be whining at the Burj Khalifa, cuddling at the Eiffel Tower, or chilling by the white sand beaches in Barbados. DoubleTree Tours and Travel. Dream it and we'll fly you there. 0704 310 130. Be truly, deeply, and madly in love with luxury and honeymoon destinations from DoubleTree Tours and Travel.